What's going on, guys? Jordy back here with Team Firespin. We got Dewey and AD here. We're going to be doing a kind of like a podcast sort of video for you guys. So we're going to kind of give, we're going to tell you guys what the November 2015 ban list is, if you haven't seen it yet. And then we're also going to talk about what we think our top 10 decks are for the new format. So let's get into the ban list real quick, and then we'll talk about the decks. So for the ban cards, this is actually pretty crazy. For those that don't know, Towers got banned. I don't even know how to say that. Apocalypse Towers, whatever. He got banned, which I'm kind of glad about. As well as Shrit for Necros, Construct, and Exciton Knight, which I didn't really like that ban, but whatever. So, and then for the limiteds, we got
Cleve Scout, hit to 1, Necros of Brionac, Necros of Unicore, reinforcement of the army. It looks like Konami was just really all about just murdering them Necros decks. Mathematician, and El Shadal Fusion, and Graph Branch of the Burning Abyss, so
got hit pretty hard.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Limit to 1.
Yeah, they were. Also Ulticon Hawk, that's right. Yeah, that hurt you a little bit.
I remember.
You remembered. That was a tale for another day. And then limited to 2, there was only 1, which was... Go for
Seer, Male Branch of the Burning Abyss.
Yeah, which I think should have gone to 1, and Graph should have gone to 2, but that's just me.
And then we had a few come off the list. Chaos Sorcerer went back to 3. I mean, it wasn't doing anything. Xian went back to 3, and then a couple surprise coming back to 3s. You get Spellbook of Fate and Gear back to 3, so helping out the spellbooks and gear decks. We'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. But it's kind of cool to see older decks kind of getting their support back to kind of come back into the ranks. So let's get on to the top 10 decks. Deck number 10. So what do we have here? We have Cleve for deck number 10. Just a couple of pros and cons really for the deck. Just anything really was like floodgates. They're floating beaters. They can play all the floodgates basically. They're hard to floodgate against because they can play floodgates. They gained a new rank 4 guy, which is that Maljester Draco Slayer thing, who can detach, or you can stack 2 rank 4 or level 4 pendulums and then detach to search for a pendulum in the end phase, which I think is going to help the deck drastically since they only have 1 scout.
For sure.
And then just they're still consistent regardless of 1 scout. I feel that they're still going to be there. They're still going to do things. The 1 scout doesn't really matter. They still have 3 of every other card, including Summoner's Art. So, yeah.
Summoner's Art's actually 2.
Oh, is Summoner's Art 2?
Yeah.
Well, never mind.
But, yeah, they still have a lot of their consistency cards. They can still play stuff like Upstart Goblin. They can still play...
that chicken game turbo thing.
Yeah, they can still do the chicken game turbo thing to get in there. They still can play Wavering Eyes to destroy their other monsters as Pendulum Scales to get them to the single scout. So I think you'll see a lot of people playing more, trying to get the consistency out, probably playing more climate change to mitigate the 1 scout thing. So it's definitely still up there, just probably not as powerful as it has been.
Some of the cons were the fact that they only have 1 scout. And then the Towers was banned. A lot of people were very adamant about playing the Towers and trying to just put, like, I've seen people put 3 Towers on the board. So it's like, without that, it's a very strong card. Without it, they kind of, not bad, but they're weaker. So, and then they're kind of weak to spell and trap removal. When I say kind of, I mean really weak. You just get that scout off board. When they pay 8, they lose 800 life points, and they don't search. So, yeah. And then they basically need scout. Well, they don't need it, but they need it to start, I guess. Basically, did you see that pun I threw in there? It's pretty good. So, those are some of the reasons why we think it will be in the top 10. It's still viable, but it's not there. So, that's the reason we put it at number 10.
All right, for number 9, we got Gear. Obviously, with Gear coming back to 3, it puts a little bit of the power back in it. It's also gotten a lot of cards released between the time that Gear was hit and now, so you've obviously got stuff like MK3, you've got Attacker for the spells and traps, you've got a lot of other things that you can do. Pros, obviously, it's very consistent. It's one of the most consistent decks ever built. Just flip armor, add another Gear monster to your hand, so that gives you a lot of options. Obviously, getting 3 Gear is very important. So another thing, they get to play a lot of traps. They can kind of force you to play at their pace. They don't really care that a lot of the other decks are faster than them, but they force you to play down at their pace. They're very easy to side for other decks. And then plus when we get Breakers of the Shadow up in January or February, I'm not sure what month that's coming out, but whenever that comes out, they do get Infinity. They do get a lot of other rank 4s, and also like Solemn Notice. They're going to get a lot of power cards that they can kind of put into their deck without having to do a whole lot of extra stuff. So that's why we think it's kind of in the 9-ish range. A couple cons, obviously it's really slow compared to the other stuff. So, some of the other decks might just outspeed it. It's weak to mass monster removal, so if you get Regeki or Darkhold, it's really hard for the deck to come back unless you have like Gear X is floating with Gear or something. Like, it's real difficult to come back from that. And then when they get behind to fast decks, it's really hard for them to come back also with no Exciton Knight to help them out there. So, like, they're definitely going to be up in the top 10, but, just some of the cons might weigh them down a little bit, at least until they get Breakers of Shadow and more support, so.
That's why we put it at number 9. So for number 8, we put Psyframe on the list. I feel that Psyframe is definitely an interesting deck to see on the list. We've seen it not only just play by itself at YCS Dallas and win the Giant Card side event, as well as recently at ARG Atlanta, I'm pretty sure it won first place, and it was combined with Yosenju's, which is an interesting topic to talk about for sure, combining a not relevant deck with a brand new idea. So it's definitely going to have the surprise factor for some of the pros. You're not going to really know what you're playing against until they respond to something you do, and then you're just like, crap, well, I'm playing in Psyframe. They have hand traps for days, as we like to say. Our team member Calvin, he plays Psyframes, and it's just consistent hand traps, and you can't get around it very easily. Their traps, as well as, their one trap, as well as older support with spells such as like the Feel Good Zone or whatever it's called, and then Psychic Feel Zone, that's what it's called, Feel Good Zone. Like, that's also really good support, but their traps their single trap Overload, and then their synchros as well. Omega is just a very, very strong card. So is Zeta. Being able to not only make Psyframes good, but other decks such as Infernoids and things like that. So it definitely makes it very, very viable. And the fact that Overload can banish face down, so when you overload a Clifford Scout, they lose Scout forever. So it's like hitting stuff face down and it doesn't come back is pretty good. So, and then some of the cons, we just have a couple things.
Yeah, obviously in order to effectively play them, you have to have no monster presence on the board, so a lot of them have tried to mitigate that because you obviously just can't play pure Cosmo. If you play pure Psyframe, you can't play pure Psyframe because if you did that, then your opponent can just kind of just stand back and do nothing. So you see a lot of people playing Psyframe putting in monsters like Wind Up Rabbit or
Doom Caliber Knight,
and that kind of helps out.
Ds.
But if one of those gets hit with effect negation where they can't get off the board, they kind of are in a really rough spot. And another con is the fact that if they do activate their monsters in hand and they don't have the field spell to immediately go into a synchro, it's really easy to just decide to go off against that. Like, because once they put the one monsters on the board, or the two monsters. Once they put the two monsters on the board, you can kind of do whatever you want, and they're not going to stop you. So that's a con. Also, the fact that they have to reveal in the hand in order to activate. Stuff like Cosmo and other stuff can kind of get around it by chaining to the activation of their effects. So if their effect doesn't stop what they were trying to stop, then it just kind of fizzles. So that's some of the cons. That's kind of why we put it on the list, but it's not super high just because a lot of the other decks are just more powerful and more consistent and stuff like that.
So number 7, we have Mermails. Some pros and cons about Mermails. They are getting Neptibus whenever Breakers of Shadow does come out, which is going to be a really good set for them. Because we also get Infinity, which they can possibly go into with the potential of not getting Ptolemaeus hit. They are a really fast deck, just that they can go off at any given moment, whenever, which really helps, especially if you attack into Lind or they have the Spear to just go off with the Lind. Just all that good stuff. They're really consistent. They have play a lot of waters, which have to be discarded as costs, which a lot of the monsters do in hand. So it's pretty good. The con of that, which is thing is that because they do have to be revealed to be special, that Mind Crush and stuff like that does hurt them a lot. And Mistake and Floodgates as usual, just the fact that they can special summon non-stop, as well as the fact that they do need to keep searching throughout the deck. That is why Mermail is number 7.
Alright, for number 6, we got Yang Zing. Finally, Yang Zing is going to be a relevant deck, guys. I haven't been since they've been released, but, the next Duelist Alliance deck got to step up.
Especially that boy, Jeff Jones.
So some pros and cons for Yang Zing and kind of why we had them at this spot on the list. Pros being they get to floodgate you out with lose 1 turn to skill drain. They can really run those 2 cards very effectively. They don't really stop anything in the deck, and they kind of just make your opponent play at your pace. Obviously, they have Yazi and Boxia, which are some pretty big boss monsters, coupled with all the Yang Zing effects, where they can have them gain other effects as well. They have the OP Trishula play, where they can Trish you on your turn, so that's always good.
And then they can also make it like unaffected by traps or something.
Yeah, and then they have I forget what the monster's name is, but the one that makes all the effects of certain attributes unplayable.
He's talking about Chao Feng.
Chao Feng, yeah.
So Chao Feng. So because of that, they can, depending on what deck they're playing against, they can kind of use that to their advantage.
Definitely.
And put out that, and that's real tough for some decks to deal with.
Especially since their tuner's light, so you can kind of just shut off Cosmos.
Yeah. Obviously some cons, which kind of kept it from getting higher on the list. They need to hit the grave to activate their effects. So if you have a card up where their graveyard effects aren't going to work, like Dweller or Soul Drain, something like that, obviously that's a con for them. They can get floodgated out, pretty much the same thing that I was just mentioning. Like if you floodgate them with a graveyard, you floodgate them like banishing stuff, that'll hurt them a lot. They can miss timing, which is important, so if their effects aren't the last thing to happen in a chain, they won't get their effects. So that's a big thing. It's not like Burning Abyss, where no matter what time their monster hits the grave, they'll just get it. That's another thing that's kind of hurt them. Another thing is that your opponent has to actually do stuff a lot of the time in order for you to play. There aren't a lot of proactive plays that the deck can make. A lot of the time it's just setting a monster and hoping that it gets run over by something, and then you go off from there. But if your opponent decides to not do that, things can get pretty tough pretty quick. So
yeah, Yang Zing versus Cyframe is going to be pretty fun.
Definitely going to be an interesting thing. So yeah, that's why it's at number 6. Alright guys, so for number 5 we put any sort of clown variants. Clowns have become a lot popular recently in the metagame, and I think a lot of the pros outweigh the cons to an extent. A lot of the cons definitely will hurt the deck, but there is a lot of pros that the clowns kind of like give to the game that definitely puts it at number 5, if not even higher on my personal level, but because I love clowns. But the fact that they can go into all the rank 4s, it's really powerful. The rank 4 is the best rank in the game. You basically can just make anything you need in the situation. They're very splashable. You can kind of put them in anything. We've seen it with Necros, we've seen it with Shaddolls, which are both is not a thing anymore. So it kind of shows that it's definitely good to be put in top decks that do get banned. Not necessarily because of the clowns, but because they're good and you can put them into good decks. They're very consistent. They can kind of keep up with any deck at the moment, including Cosmos, which is pretty cool. They also have Damage Juggler, which kind of doesn't allow Farm Girl to get her effect off, which is, I feel, is really good. They gained their new card, Plush Fire, which we call Fire Cone or Fire Snow Cone. He's a very, very strong card. He's the new Pendulum card. He basically just, when he's destroyed, or when any of the Perform Mages are destroyed, he can special summon himself and then take 500. So that kind of helps with since you take the 500, you can bring back, if you're playing Clown Blade, that is, you can bring back 1,000 Blades, go into more plays. You can also do some silly things with Wavering Eyes to destroy him, as well as that one guy, the Draco rank 4 guy, I don't remember.
Draco Slayer.
Yeah, that guy. Luster is really, really good to combat with him, because you can just play Luster, pop him, and then bring him out. So that's really powerful. So it's a very, very powerful, consistent deck. Adding the Pendulums in makes it even more consistent and more nutty. And then, of course, they have Norden, so anything that can really play Instant Fusion in Norden's pretty good. Some of the cons, and the ban played on kind of hurts them. Any Floodgates really hurt them. But specifically, and the ban played on doesn't allow them to play the game. As well as, like, Hand Traps, Maxi really hurts. It's either you continue with your play and they draw, like, 40 cards, which is basically everything, or you just kind of stop and then you just sit on Trick Clown. So if you play through the Max C and you don't win that turn, you pretty much lose. So that's one of the bigger cons of Clown Blade, or just clowns in general, which is why we put it at number 5.
Number 4, we have the all-powerful Burning Abyss. You know, I'm just trying to go so Fire Lake, bruh. Their pros are they're really consistent. They can go with they can pretty much go with the flow. They have a new card, Plainful Escape, which is a pretty decent card if you're not playing Burning Abyss. But if you are playing Burning Abyss, it's pretty OP. You can just tribute off a monster, gain its effect, as well as search one from either the deck or the grave. So, recycle your tour guides. That's my wife.
Waifu.
Dante has not been touched in the last year, which is a bit of surprise in my personal opinion, because Dante is the reason that deck can go off, just because it just sends everything to grave, and you just go off of it. It is pretty strong against Pendulum decks. It just has a really good matchup against them. A lot of the Pendulum decks right now are not going to be able to keep up with the fact that they can keep replenishing their board with such cards such as a Traveler, or you can pop the Pendulum Scales with a Fire Lake, which is another OP card within that deck, in my opinion, just because Fire Lake is recyclable one. You can get it off like once a turn if you keep recycling it with Dante, as well as the fact that it just stops your opponent from doing stuff, as we've seen from our champ, Noah Green. Some bad or cons with it is that Norden is a card right now, and it's heavily played. So if you know you're playing against Burning Abyss, then you're easily going to go into Abyss Dweller, which is going to stop the grave, which you need in order to play Burning Abyss. They only have 1 Graph and 2 Seers, which can slow it down just because Graph was a way to start getting in touch with a lot of your stuff, as well as Seer was able just to bring stuff back, whether it was Virgil already used or Dante you needed a 25 defense for, something like that. The deck could possibly, in my personal opinion, go up in the ranks just because we don't really know what's going to be happening with the meta. It could shake up and be a strong competitor even without the Seer and the Graphs. Yeah.
Alright, so for number 3, we have Infernoid. A surprise addition to the list. I don't think before YCS Dallas really anybody had Infernoid on their radar, but now that has come and gone, and the true power of that deck has been kind of shown, it's definitely deserving of this high of a rank, especially considering how everything else has been kind of hit. So one, Infernoids are still at full power, so that's definitely a pro. They're very explosive. They gained Omega, which was a surprise for a lot of people. With the guy who won YCS Dallas playing that in his deck, it kind of just showed you if you can go into Omega in that deck, it's very, very unfair. It's an unfair combo essentially, where you get to keep banishing cards out of your opponent's hand as well as putting your big beaters on the board, which is another pro of the deck. That all of the monsters are pretty much big beaters that you can get for free from the graveyard, just like Dragon Rulers. As far as being able to get free big beaters from the grave, so they did get Decatron in the last one of the last couple sets, the level 1 that they can actually normal summon, and it also gets its effect when it's special summon as well, which is very powerful. So Reasoning is obviously their number 1 card that they want to get to, and if they hit that off of Reasoning, it's a really strong swing in tempo. And then the 2 big boss monsters, they have a Heavy Storm on wings and they have a Dark Hole on wings. So
Yes.
you know, just like those are 2 of the most powerful cards in the game, and the fact that they can just splash a monster on the board and get that effect is really nice. They also have a lot of opponent grave manipulation, so you can tribute a lot of the smaller guys to banish things out of your opponent's graveyard to stop effects or searches. It's just really versatile. It's like a very versatile effect. And it's really easy for the deck to gain momentum if they get to that first Reasoning. If they get to the first Reasoning and they get a lot of monsters in the grave, you can probably expect to lose that game. Some of the cons, Reasoning is obviously something that's come up a lot on this one, but they have to get to that Reasoning a lot of the time in order to win. It's really hard if they don't get to a Reasoning or they don't get to a monster gate. They do have to manage their level count for their effect monsters, so it's obviously a con. They can't just splash everything on the board. They can't really normal summon. The normal summons they do have are kind of off theme, except for Decatron. So the fact that a lot of their monsters you have to banish things, which is losing resources in order to put a monster on the board, is kind of relevant. Against Reasoning, if you call 1 or 4, that's usually the right call as far as the Reasoning goes. You obviously don't want them getting Raiden or Decatron on the board. In my opinion, you have to call 1 every time, just because that's such a gigantic swing. If they manage to get a raid on the board, fine. But Decatron is something you can't allow to hit the board. Also, it's easy to really floodgate against them. You can play Retaliating Sea, Imperial Iron Wall. So that's some of the cons, and it's kind of why it's number 3 on this list, behind a couple other decks that just have a slightly higher power level, and can slow your opponent down a little bit better. So that's why we put Inferno at number 3.
Number 2, we had the all-powerful Satellar Knights. So Satellar Knights, the pros about it is the fact that they have, that 1 card, Alpha, pretty much just negate stuff. Nice little barrier for it.
Is that what that does?
I think that's what it does.
You
Hopefully
sure?
I'm right. It just has a really good trap lineup, which I'm a fan of. You can play Fuse 15, which is, not a small number at all in this game. Skybridge, which was able to replace the 1 Rhoda, in my opinion. Just the fact that you can normal summon a Deneb and then pretty much have access to the deck if anything else needs to be happening. Like, you can Skybridge for the Unucula to get a dump out, so you have another target just in case that you can't get the Deneb engrave. Stuff like that. It has really easy rank 4 access, just like the Clowns. I feel like it's a little bit better than the Clowns with that. Just the fact that you can simply, with 1 card, potentially get up to...
Dissing on my Clowns? Sorry, go ahead.
You can get up to 3 monsters off 1 turn, that being the Altair into Vega into Deneb, or vice versa, or anything. Any combo among those 3 cards. Trevere is a card which, just compulses the field, which is really good. Just a giant Trinade on legs for monsters as well. The fact that they probably can get into Infinity the easiest with the fact that they can get up to 5 monsters on the board with the Ptolemaios, which can make a Cyber Dragon Infinity with, I believe, 4 negates on it. So
Which
that's
is pretty
it's a pretty scary thought, especially if they don't hit it like the way they just hit it. So I'd definitely be holding on to those Tarot Knight decks for right now, just in case you a little sign of what's going on. The cons of the deck is the fact that we do have only 1 Rhoda. Rhoda was very key in the deck, just because the fact that essentially, since Deneb is a Rhoda, you had 6 searches, and cutting that to 4 does hurt the consistency just a little bit. You can side a little bit similar to Cosmo with that being the light imprisoning mirrors and just stuff like that. And the fact that the plays, sadly, are very predictable. As soon as you summon a altar, your opponent's gonna try to hit the Deneb unless they have a Deneb in hand, which they're gonna try to go for Vega. So the way to stop the deck is just to pay attention to see what they're doing. If they normal summon altar, you pretty much know what's gonna happen.
Which makes Infernoids even more powerful because they can just remove the Deneb. So
definitely look out the fact that they can side in a lot of floodgates to help them out, such as Iron Wall against Infernoid or Cosmo, and Shadow Imprisoning Mirror for Burning Abyss and stuff like that. It's just going to be a really interesting. I feel like they're going to be duking it out with the other two decks that we previously mentioned, that being Infernoid and Burning Abyss.
For sure.
So that's why we have it on number 2 on the list.
Alright, so some honorable mentions for the list that we think are still going to be good decks in the meta, but just didn't quite make the top 10 cut. So, I mean, obviously Necros and Shadows will still sort of be a thing. People are still going to try to make it work. They've been the beloved decks for the past year, so people are going to try to make them work. So I guess those are technically honorable mentions, but the ones we decided to pick were Sylvans. Sylvans have always been good. There's not really much explanation needed. They can do some crazy things. Ritual Beast, which is my homie's favorite deck. The Conhawk put to 1, the ulti Conhawk that is, it hurts it, but it's still there. It's still, I mean, everything else is at 3 in the deck, so like it still works. And then we think Magispectors might do something. They're the newest archetype from Dimensions Chaos. I almost forgot the name. Which they're interesting, but I think it's more hype than anything right now. I mean, Raccoon's what, $45, and he's just like a summonable searcher, just like Deneb. So it's all hype, but who knows? Maybe those decks will still contend or go somewhere. But those are the honorable mentions. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for the number 1 spot on our top 10. Does anyone know what it is? I mean, it's kind of a given. Leave comments what you think it is, because we're not gonna see you later. Duh, it's Cosmo! It's the best deck in the world! It's the greatest, because I'm playing it. That's the only reason. So the pros are I'm playing it. The cons are it's really, like, there's no cons. It's amazing. But actually, the pros, we're going to continue to get support with this deck. It just came out last set. We got amazing support this new set in Dimensions of Chaos. Who knows what we're going to get in Breaker of Shadows, but it's already shaping out to be the best deck. I mean, the best card in the deck, other than Farm Girl, is definitely Dark Destroyer, and he's at $135 right now. Like, there's a reason that card is expensive. It's also very consistent and very, very fast. You can chain to a lot of things that your opponent does and still go off. You can dodge a lot of interesting things, such as like in Psyframes, you can dodge the beta, the attack stopper, to continue with the battle phase and different things like that. They can also go off really easily and pull off a lot of awesome OTKs, which you think about different concepts and different chains and everything every day. Like, I think about the deck every day. That's what I'm trying to build. So it's crazy, like the different things where you can put the small monsters on the board from the big monsters and just kind of continue. A lot of interesting cards that they can play, which a lot of people don't think about. One that we've been testing in the deck is Allure of Darkness. The fact that you can make Allure of Darkness basically free, it basically allows you to play Pot of Greed and then just remove your Dark Destroyer or remove your Wicked Witch and then just get it back with Cosmotown. Yeah, you pay 800 life points or potentially 400 life points depending on who you remove, but it's free. It's two cards, and you could even bring it back with the new guy Strawman. So like, it's free. They also they're all floaters. They can kind of just continue on the board, and then as well as Dark Hole being free in the deck as well. I mean, I play one Regeki and 2 Dark Holes, and having a free Dark Hole is pretty dumb because all the big monsters will just get their effects, all the ships. And then you can play some interesting cards in the deck, which we're gonna keep secret for now, and the band played on. But those are the pros. Some of the cons, I would say it's going to be the most sided against. It's going to be the most hyped deck. It is the most hyped deck. And I feel like it's going to be number 1 in everyone's list, at least going on. Stopping the little girls, the pilots, or stopping the bitches, as we would say. It's basically like that's how you stop the deck. So you don't allow Farm Girl to go off and they lose. And then as well as it's very, very expensive right now, which is going to kind of deteriorate a lot of people from wanting to play it. Good word choice. It's going to be anywhere like Necros was when it came out. It's going to be roughly around $1,000 to play the deck. And that's pretty pricey. That's what I feel are some of the pros and cons. I don't know if you guys have any other things other than it's going to be the best.
No, I mean, like, obviously with Dark Destroyer, it allows you to kind of control your opponent's board on their turn, so that's another pro, but, like, you pretty much hit it all. Also, like, Gold Sarcophagus with Strawman is another combo that you can kind of use to your advantage.
And freaking Cosmo Town is broken! Like, it's topics for another day, but that is our top 10 decks for the upcoming format, based off of the new ban list and based off of what we're going to be getting in Breakers of Shadow, as well as what we just got in Dimensions of Chaos. So leave your top 10s in the comments down below, and that's about it. You guys got anything else?
I guess just let us know what you guys think is going to be the top 10s, like he said, and I guess let us know what y'all think going forward, what's going to be the best everything. So,
and if anything changes in our list and our personal team preferences, we'll definitely do an update. So if you guys want to leave a like, and we'll talk to you guys in the next video. See you later!